Hello. This was supposed to be a follow-up video to the last one. And the last one was not a video that I intended to send out. In fact, I just started to leave myself a little 5-minute video so that I would remember something to talk about. And I kept going because I got on that roll, I suppose. Now, today I was going to make a video to follow up on that, to talk about the narcissistic personality disorder and the psychopath and the different types of entities that are on this earth matrix, artificial world that is gone out of sync in many ways. Now, I'm out of sync too. Now, I was going to make the video to follow up and even talk about a couple of movies which was on my list 6 months ago. That shows you how much progress I've been making. I haven't made any. But today, instead, as usual, my planned talk or conversation, which should, by the way, just be a telephone call, really. I should just be calling someone on a telephone, ringing, and having a one-on-one private conversation and saying how distressed I am at my situation and the situation, no doubt, for everyone else. But as I sound too important by talking about other people, when I really don't know what I'm talking about most of the time, in the sense that I'm playing it by ear, literally, even though one ear is half gone, because it is a daily thing of figuring things out and seeing things. That's really all it is for me. I'm not a person that knows a lot or has studied much or even wants to know these things. But look, I'm just going to say, and I probably won't send this video out, but it's going to be a negative video. It's going to be an angry video. And I'm sorry for that, because this is not how we're meant to be, I don't think. None of us are perfect. Most of us are out of balance. That's a truth. But even that word balance will be used in some spiritual, religious mumbo-jumbo that this world presents, because this matrix has everything covered. It is beyond most people's comprehensions and beyond mine. It doesn't matter what you do, which way you turn, it will get you. So if you think you're on top of it, well, obviously I'm not. So you can see that. You can see that I am not on top of it. But I have tried to get a little bit on top of it, and I think I was headed to be a bit on top of it. That's why the matrix came down. But to some people, okay. If you can see it for what it is and not be affected by it. Not be affected by it emotionally, spiritually and vibrationally. That's what it really comes down to. It. See, today and the day before when I left the other video, where I was actually at rock bottom, and I thought, oh well, today can't be any worse. But it will get you, even though the incident might have been less. But at a spiritual level, at a psychological level, today, in some ways, was worse just for a limited time. And I'm going to explain why. In a previous video, I mentioned a little bird and how much effort I went to try to keep it alive, even though I did not want to. You see, I've separated to a certain extent from most humans, most of my life, a long time ago, and had no problem with that. Not because I thought they were negative, no. I now realise most of them are, but no, they were not back then, or at least I didn't think so, but maybe I was not aware, because if you do not interact with a lot of people, you only have the limited people you interact with. I thought the few that I interacted with, which couldn't be helped, were negative. They were of the psychopathic, narcissistic variety. But, this world is a minefield of confusion in many ways. There again, sometimes even you can learn, as I say, a lot from negative people. They almost show you what you don't want. They almost emphasise that which you are not, or which you don't want to be involved in. They have a benefit in a funny kind of way. I would say that in my own life, that they have drew attention to how far I have gone from what I should have or could have been. So they represent negative, but they're saying, hey, this is what is negative for you. This is what you should be against. This is what you don't really like. This is not your nature. See, every person is different there again, so it does depend on, but I don't think I'm putting this very well, and I am very not in a good... See, I shouldn't be making a video, but I'm doing it because I never know if it will be the last. And as I can't make the phone call, and as I am surrounded by negativity in human and in environmental form, but the humans work the environment too, I make the video reaching out across time and space, shall we say, even though I don't know how much time and space that is, just as we don't know in the bigger picture, to a group of people, a small group probably, that I don't really know at all. I don't know their tastes, I don't know what their life has been, I don't know where they are at in comparison to me with what the world is. I assume that some are separating themselves from the matrix, and I believe that is the only way. I want to separate myself from the matrix, but cannot. It won't let me. And I succumb. And today I succumb to the matrix in a bad, evil way. Because the matrix is just that. And it delights and celebrates and has a comedy show that it laughs when it sees someone succumb to it in a way that is the most spiritually negative. And today, and it's happened before, but today it became very pronounced, because don't forget, the matrix is a build-up. If the matrix only interacted with me, shall we say, that's putting it nicely, in a very minor way, or in a spasmodic way, is that the word? In other words, not 24/7 every day of the week, as it does, I would be able to push it away, and I would be able to not overreact to the incidences. Even though in the past I have succumbed to some, yes, but not... but I was aware. See, once you become aware, you can not be pulled in as much by circumstances and interactions with the matrix that are very detrimental and negative. You can do that. But if it is 24/7 and if it is physical, mental, at every possible level, where you're bombarded literally with negative vibrations, negative sounds, negative, to where you're driven to the point of insanity, you could almost say, because insanity is simply where you are not able to control yourself, to where you are not seeing things as they are, to where you have let the matrix and the mind parasites come right into your mind and take over. Today, the Archon mind parasites, or the negative forces of the God entity, whatever you want to call it, these are possession, came into, and this is what I'm saying, that's the only reason I'm making the video, is to show you that, I make videos about being a spiritual being, and I'm saying I can be possessed, I can be taken over. So it's a warning to anyone who hasn't separated totally from the matrix. You need to really and I would advise that you separate before it comes full on, because when it comes full on, it will be very hard for you to separate. Some people think the matrix, are aware of the matrix, I would imagine. I don't know, because I don't know what the situation is for everyone else. I'm going to say that. I really don't. But for some people, the matrix might not be very full on. They're aware of it. They see the negative things in the reality, but it's not hitting them hard personally. It's not around them like almost like a totally negative alien force around them 24/7, to where they can't breathe and they're stifled, even though they want to go out and smell the fresh air. You go out and smell the fresh air in a matrix if it comes down, and you won't be smelling fresh air because you will not be going out into the same reality. And this, of course, creates negative vibration for everyone else. This is the purpose too. This is, I think, why some people have the matrix even more strong, because the vibration will make it worse. Because the matrix, it almost appears to be deliberately pushing towards more negativity. Now, you can take this at any level you want, depending on how you view the world, depending on what your beliefs are, and depending on what. I'm not religious, as I've said before, but I will say this before I succumb to more anger and more negativity by keeping on this video. There are probably some religious people who are more separated from, and I say some, because everything is the matrix. And my own personal view, as I've said in other videos, is that most religions are the matrix. So it would only be a few that have separated, that might be very religious in some way, and they have separated from the matrix and are aware of it. And so therefore, they are more better, regardless of whether you personally believe in particular gods or whatever. These people may well be in a better position. This is what I observe anyway, or think. Now, before I go really negative, because and just tell you how I succumbed to the matrix today, and how I felt that I would be better off not here, because I realised that it was so offensive for me to think in terms of such negativity and to act on it. In other words, to raise your hand in anger and want to destroy that which you would normally want to preserve. That is the matrix at its best, at its most diabolically negative. And it celebrates and it's happy. and its anti-life is, I can't even find words. Words do not say. I think there was a movie I saw years and years ago called Contempt. That does not sum it up, because it is offence. Like, I'm an imperfect person and have done many wrong things. But now that I'm aware, because in the past I did wrong things, but I was only semi-aware. And I say semi-aware because we do know when we do something negative, but we justify it. And actually, even today, my negative, hateful, destructive thinking and action was justified 100% in the sense that it was provoked, it was set up, it's been continual, and to an outsider it would appear that that I was a very negative, bad person, because they would not understand what possession is. They wouldn't understand that I was possessed, but I would not have been possessed had I not been dealing with something else that was possessed. If you follow me, which you probably don't, but it was a bit like this, right? It'd be like this. And it is like this, and it did happen like this, but if I actually say the complete episode, I might not be able to continue with the video because I will probably be a bit overwhelmed. And to actually say how evil can possess you when you're making videos about spirituality shows you how much power and how much anti-life this matrix really has. And it does. Its anti-life is beyond most people's comprehension. And of course, this is because we are headed towards some sort of closure in a funny kind of way, I would think. Certainly, it is not heading towards better. But you see, I contributed to that today by succumbing to the matrix, so it is ironic and diabolical and terrible in every possible way. I do not know how to express it even. But, obviously, if I was at a calmer level, which I think someone expressed months and months ago on some video, to remain calm and to, not to... But you see, because we are in the matrix and you're dealing with real people and real situations, it is not actually always possible to just separate totally from the matrix and the negativity, because you're still living in the matrix and there'll be repercussions. So you have to deal with it at a physical level. It's no good me saying I'm spiritual. I can see it's a setup. I can see it's the matrix. I can see that I'm hitting out at a negative force or a negative situation and it's not even the fault sometimes. Because if you are dealing with a mind-controlled entity, it's like if you're dealing with a dog that has rabies and that dog turns on you. Are you justified in attacking the dog? But if you're like me and you don't believe in doing harm to animals, that's my weakness. I've said this before in videos. The Matrix knows your weaknesses. It delights even more if it can get you to do something negative in an area or a field that is close to your heart, shall we say. Then the Matrix really celebrates. Then the Matrix God is like, this makes a mockery of a human being. This seems to be the purpose. And we are being mocked 24/7. Most of the so-called humans, I would say that not all is being mocked because, as I've said before, it's one thing for me to be taken over by the Matrix and to be taken over or possessed by a negative force, by a negative spiritual invasion that is anti-human, anti-life, evil. Evil is anti-life. And to be aware of it. But as you can see, I have bounced back and I have almost pleaded for forgiveness from whoever or whatever is the... Look, I say this honestly, and this is not what my videos have been, because in a way, as I've said before, humans, their thought creates the reality in a way, but I can't speak for anyone else, so if you think that I'm pathetical and bad, you are quite right. But I do feel and know, at least in my own, I can hear a siren going right now. Sirens go all the time around here, because, and it's loud. Now, I can remember when I lived for my first 25, 30 years, where you would rarely hear a siren of any sort, and yet I lived on a main road. Now round here, you hear it all the time. Now this is a negative vibration. Actually, it's the very least of the negative vibrations that I personally experience. But it's an indication for those that are not experiencing more that they are in a matrix, but they don't see it that way. Most people don't think that that is telling them that they are in a matrix. That siren is saying, you are in a matrix. You must play our game, or else, because it's our game. Don't think that you can just walk away from this matrix game. You're in it, you consented to play in it, and you must continue. Of course, I don't think I consented, but, who knows? Maybe I consented so long ago when things were easier, and I thought that like so many people who are playing in this game, that it might be okay and that maybe there would be a benefit. Maybe I had a purpose, which I've long since lost. I don't know. And I'm not making any sense again as usual. But I am saying, I don't know how I'm even making this video. I don't know how I'm actually sitting here saying all this. Because it's not a benefit in a way, but at the same time, it's a warning because, like I say that I'm aware of a lot. Now, but just a few hours ago, I felt like killing. And in my mind, I'm like, it's almost justified because I'm like, hey, this is a negative matrix. There is no hope. There is no way out. This species is gone and many life forms have been taken over. So, like I say, if you're an animal lover and you look at a dog and you have a dog, but you know the dog is possessed, you know the dog is mind controlled, and you know the dog has been placed in your realm to create havoc and to create negativity. You believe dog is man's best friend, and under normal circumstances in a normal world this is so. But it's not just humans that can be taken over. Any living thing can be taken over because the Matrix has full power now. The Matrix has full control over all and everything from the smallest thing to the largest thing. This is what disturbed me most when I started to see it. I didn't realise it, I just saw it. It was in front of me. It wasn't like I had to think about things. Obviously, I do think a lot more about things now and try to figure certain things out, but some things was this fact was presented to me about the Matrix having control over animals, for instance, and I'm not sure if it's all animals. I would suggest that it probably is, but possession is a funny thing. Possession is a funny thing. I don't even know. You see, I'm talking about something that I wouldn't have dreamed in a billion years that I would be talking about possession. I don't believe in possession. I thought The Exorcist was a revolting movie with the girl like that. I thought it was a well-made movie in some ways, but I thought the actual idea of that girl being possessed was the most ridiculous thing. And that's what most people thought. They think it's a cheap, not a cheap horror movie, but a horror movie that has no validity. It has a lot of validity. And possession is just a word. That's just a way of saying when you are taken over by a spirit or a negative force, a negative thought that's not your own. And even if it becomes your own, you really don't want it. But because you have been brought down to such low frequency, because you are at such a depleted state, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and every other way possible, it is easy for that possession to overwhelm you, to come right in, even if it's only for a limited time. Today for me, I feel low frequency all the time, but I usually don't let it come in to such an extent that I will temporarily lose control of my physical body to where, yes, I could. Today, I literally probably could have killed if I had had a knife in my hand. This is demonic, evil, anti-life, Matrix God and its minions' possession of a human being. It is demonic, like in The Exorcist. I do not understand all these things. I don't go into these things. I don't understand all the, like when I say we're spiritual beings, I just mean that we are really, like when I say the thought creates reality, this is only because I've seen it. I don't feel spiritual in doing it because I cannot create anything worthwhile. But occasionally there will be a glimpse of a little something that is nice or good. And it will only be so minor because the Matrix has full power. Humans are not connected to other human beings. They are connected to the Matrix. The Matrix uses everything that is good of the few human beings and turns it round and uses it for its own benefit. I personally don't understand this, but I understand it because I see it. If the Matrix can induce and set up and deliberately bring someone to a hopeless mindset to where they would kill an animal when they are probably the world's greatest animal lover, that is victory for the Matrix. That is victory for its God. I don't know these entities. I don't want to know them. I don't want anything to do with them. But they force me to. They force me to play in their evil, anti-life, negative game. I'm not an advanced spiritual human being. I'm just a regular little old human being, but even I find it despicable, vile and low at a level that is unspeakable, and yet I'm speaking it because we are in very negative times. Now, whether this is just my world, I don't know. Maybe I'm the negative force. Maybe it's my fault. I'm sure that some of it is. I mean, today, to succumb to that, when now I look back and say, hey, I let my senses overwhelm me when I know that is the Matrix. I let, it's like I have OCD, so I don't like filth, and yet I am living in filth. I am living in filth physically. I am living in filth mentally, emotionally, psychologically. I'm dealing with filth in other people because they are infected with the Archon mind parasite. You try to help. I'm not a saviour. I'm not here to point these things out to people. I'm not here to turn them around even. But I don't lose hope, and I think, hey, it's a necessary thing for our survival. It is just about survival, really. And then sometimes you say, survival for what? For a negative matrix? Why do you want to keep a negative matrix going? Perhaps it's meant to crash. I don't know. But this is how it makes you feel. And this is not positive. And there again, I'm sick of saying positive and negative. I'm sick of saying that because it's like, even that sounds as though you're some sort of, I don't know, to say positive, negative, out of balance, all this stuff. And it's all being used by the mad matrix to manipulate everyone into going along other lines, Even this spirituality thing will be definitely manipulated in human beings. The religion's manipulated already. And yet underneath it all, it's probably quite simple. And I intend to keep it simple. I don't think that we should complicate it. I can't do that anyway. It just... And I don't think that it matters. It probably would be nice to have the whole picture, of course, but does it matter? We're in the matrix, so we have to deal with the matrix, so it doesn't matter what's outside of the matrix. See, so today my actions were negative for the matrix, and if there's anything outside of it, it was negative for that too, and would be looked upon as negative. So it doesn't matter if I say, oh, I understand the universe and I understand everything, which I don't, but even if I did, it wouldn't matter. I'm still in the matrix. You either ignore it, which is almost impossible, or you have to play in it. And really what you do in the matrix, and like I say, it's all I can say is that today I'm ashamed to be a human being. Truly. Because it's one thing to unconsciously think to hurt an animal, but to consciously be aware of it and to raise your hand in anger against that which you would normally protect it does make you feel that things are quite hopeless. But, and at this point I almost wish I was religious because, you're almost putting too much onto yourself in a way. And I wonder if, because even animals are spiritual, some. They all should probably be, but they're living things either way, and humans are meant to be connected to that and value that and see something good in it, as I've said before, I valued the bird more than myself, a few years ago when I had that experience with it. Actually, it was 6-7 years ago now, so it's quite a reasonable time. But obviously I was very, you can be very lonely and separate to where any life force becomes important. I mean, I personally think that species are meant to stick with their own kind. In other words, cats are meant to be with cats, dogs are meant to be with dogs, humans are meant to be with humans. But if that's not possible, but you interact with the others too in a positive way. By that I mean you see them as living things that can bring you a benefit in a way, or should. But if the Matrix doesn't like that, the Matrix will turn the living things to be a negative thing for you. They know that a human being is meant to get a positive vibe from an animal. And sometimes a more positive vibe from an animal than from a human, because humans are so complicated and humans can be so infected by the Archon mind parasite. They can play with you like the humans that I've mentioned in the previous video, at such a level that you can be psychologically confused to such a point and angry to such a point, because you know that your very psyche, your very identity, your very basis of what you are is being warped and taken from you by some humans, particularly the narcissistic psychopathic types, because they are possessed, but they have any knowledge they get, they will use to play that game with you. Any information they get, and because they are single-minded and one-eyed, there again, one-eyed, like the God, and I don't know what I'm talking about there, but when I say one-eyed, they're focused. See, I don't focus on one human being. But if I put all my focus onto just one human being, as the narcissist and the psychopath does in their game, you can imagine that you would know an awful lot about that human being. You can imagine that you would probably be able to manipulate and play them pretty well, because you're putting all your focus onto them. Every little bit of information you're picking up. Most normal human beings wouldn't do that, I wouldn't think. But of course, as I've said before, the majority is now what is not normal anyway. But in the past, I would have assumed that. Like I might interact with some humans, but I don't put all my focus onto it. I don't spend 24/7. Yes, I do. I do spend 24/7 thinking about this mad Matrix and its entity and its minions now, because I'm forced to and I have to. I don't want to, but I don't spend 24/7 thinking about one other human being and thinking about that human being to see how I can play them and manipulate them and create negativity for them. And that, of course, is the same game of the Matrix. They concentrate completely on the real human beings, and they have access to the full human being's emotions and mind, and they play them 24/7. The matrix, the narcissist and the psychopath is very representative of the matrix God and its minions, entities, disciples, whatever word you want to use, and they may well be all different too. Well, they're probably not all different, but even the narcissist and psychopath is operating for the matrix by doing that. Because if it is destroying the real human beings, even though it doesn't know it's working for the matrix. In other words, the psychopath doesn't know it's working for the matrix, doesn't know that when he's focused on a human being with negative intent, doesn't know that that is the intention of the matrix God and the matrix. He just is acting on his own environmental influences that have been set up by the matrix God and the matrix, but he doesn't know that he's working for a higher power, shall we say. Would he still do this if he knew this? If he knew that he was being manipulated too? That's an interesting question. That was kind of the purpose of my videos a while back. Even from the start in a funny kind of way, even though I at that point was not 100% aware of what the percentages of people were that were negative in the world or in the general population. I knew that it was much higher than what I had been told. I knew that from my own experience and just from, I don't know what, some sort of insight, if you like. I knew it. No, I really knew it mainly from my own personal experience. I said, hey, they say the statistics is 2%. I said, well, how come every person I have ever known fits that category? I'm like, no, I don't think that's the case. But of course, then as I said before, I said, hey, they couldn't know the exact statistics anyway because they say that these people never present themselves to a survey or to a psychiatrist or to a medical thing. So the few that do would be a few, whereas it could well be, that's right, like it is, the majority. And it's gradually became more that way, I would imagine, over the years, I would think. Because if your environment changes, how children are brought up, their circumstances, there's a lot more room now for that creation of the psychopath. Whereas, probably, there again, I don't know because I don't time travel, as you can imagine. I might sound as though I do the way I talk and I say about, I do not know all these things. I do not know anything really. But I see things that are in my reality, a physical thing, and I interpret them. And you don't have to be real smart. Don't like using that word. That is a matrix word. Sorry about that. I would like to delete it. But see, even words are from the matrix. And a lot of words have negative vibration, negative connotation, and may even be the language of the God. See, I don't know this and I can't help that. So, that's what I say. You play for the matrix in many, many ways. Many, many ways. But, any rate, like I say, today I'm making this video when I was meant to be making it about a few movies in relation to the last one. And instead I feel overwhelmed and compelled to tell you how and show you that no one is above the matrix. Okay, so I'm low frequency and I'm 24/7 surrounded by the matrix. So yes, I'm talking like a victim and almost asking for sympathy and understanding to what is negative. Well, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I only know that I don't think that it is right to want to destroy an animal because the matrix is overwhelming you and because the animal is mind controlled and possessed. You see, the matrix knows that me personally, that I can't put an animal down under any circumstances. It's just something I know that I can't do, and that's why I don't like to have animals. I don't want to be in possession of animals. I don't want to, I don't really believe that we should have domestic animals anyway, but, that's another issue that, that I don't wish to go into, because if you're in a totally ridiculous world and you start to talk ideologically and say, yes, animals should be with animals and they should be in their own natural environment and humans should be with, none of this is possible in this world. So clearly many animals are better off being domesticated, even though they will then be mind controlled and they will be chipped and they will be monitored, etc., etc. Don't forget that our world has gone so very unnatural, even in that area, I often think. And none of it's really a benefit. You see, everything we're convinced is a benefit. It's a benefit to tag your animal, to have it chipped so that if it gets lost, they can find it. Well, I've had incidences with that. Believe you me, if your animal is dead somewhere, probably isn't really going to matter whether you find it or not. The chipping may well have more down negative connotations like the mind control of the animal, because the vibrations can be used to control the animal, than just that purpose that they give you. If we were living in a so-called perfect world and animals were roaming around freely, other human beings would just pick up animals and look after them or notify you. You wouldn't have all this necessary for technology. Technology is anti-life in every way. Of that I have no dispute about in any way. I don't care if people don't like me for saying that. I really don't. And I don't care if you want to see some benefits to it, because we will be convinced of everything and anything in this reality. Of course there are benefits to everything, otherwise we wouldn't use them. But the negative connotations of technology outweighs the benefits 1,000,000,000 to 1 if people knew the reality, but we don't. And if you, even if you're spiritual, which I find mind-boggling now, because I'm looking into a few things far too late in my life to realise that some people even think technology can be spiritual. Can you believe that? I can't believe that people believe that, but they do. Because they say, hey, well, maybe we're really technological. And we're in a technological matrix. Well, I can't dispute that. Can't dispute that, can I? But I'm going to say it. I'll say it till the end, and I don't care if I'm wrong. I would rather die than say that technology is a benefit, or that technology is... And I don't care. I don't care if I am not natural. I don't care if I'm really an artificial being. I don't care. I am saying I don't want to be part of this technological matrix. So I don't care if I've been turned into a technological being. I'd rather be like that movie that I talked about, The Rise of the Android, where the android in the end decided to be more human and die rather than be part of being a programmed robot. I think I did a thing on that one. Second-rate movie, but made an interesting point. Gee, I'm angry today, aren't I? Well, I am, because if the matrix drives you and you say, well, you need to take responsibility for yourself, person. That's what some people will say to me, say, hey, it's a reflection of you anyway, so why are you angry? you succumbed. You succumbed to anti-life. You succumbed to evil. You could have created a disaster. And then you'd have wanted yourself to be gone because you wouldn't be able to live with it, you know. And then the matrix vibration comes down. But I didn't choose it. Like I say, it kind of is like to know you're set up. You see, like if you're dealing with an animal, right? But you didn't want the animal because you know the animal will be used against you. But you can't put the animal down because that is abhorrent to your nature and your beliefs. That is worse than death. So you're in a catch-22. The Matrix is one hell of a catch-22 in every single way. Especially if it really gets to you. Especially if it's really like, hey, we're losing this. So now we just expose everything and we don't care about consequences because this is not someone that we want anything to do with anyway. You know, while the Matrix has a use for you or can still play you and you're willing to play and benefit negativity, then the Matrix will not... the Matrix won't then want to shove you out of the Matrix. But if you... basically, it's only common sense, isn't it? That no one wants a player in the Matrix. You know, or let's just go back to nature. If you were a lion and you wanted to be part of the what do they call it? The group of lions. You know, you have to be like the other lions. You can't be a lion that hates the other lions and hates the environment, you know. The Matrix doesn't want players that hate the Matrix 100% and that believe that the Matrix is a negative reflection of a positive world that once was or should have or could have been. But then again, that sounds very airy-fairy too, because like I say, all I can say is that there's natural and there's artificial. That's cutting it very basic. It's being black and white. And most people would say, hey, she's a fanatic because it's black and white. We shouldn't be fanatical. We shouldn't be black and white. We shouldn't say this is that or this. Everything is really in a grey area. And look, I think that is generally true. But if the Matrix is changing and we're headed now in a different time, and we are, as I've said in others, in the end of a kind of World War III, look, you're almost forced into taking that black and white position. And things will get, if they get more negative and more aggressive and more unnatural and more... to where it's the opposite to what you would want. Look, I don't think it's that unreasonable to be extreme, even though I don't like to be, and I know that it is, I know it's negative. And maybe there could be a positive to it. Obviously, I don't see it because when you experience and you're brought to that level, it's hard to then just push it away and say there is a positive reason for it all. even though there could well be. And you would assume there probably should be. You know, you would assume that. But anyway, let me just say this too, like, because I was going to make a video on this sort of thing. Because like I say, I don't want to be here making a video as though I'm some sort of religious preacher. That is the furthest thing that I would want to do. And it's playing for the Matrix. See, even when you make a video, you can be playing for something that you don't want to be. I want to separate completely, and instead I'm playing full force. Today I played full force for the negative anti-life matrix. It took me over. It could have destroyed me and other life forms. And I'm angry to realise that that can happen still, even being aware of what things are. To know you are being set up and to still walk right into the trap makes me angry at myself, obviously. Very angry at myself. And to reluctantly admit some sort of admiration for a mad matrix, but, to admit admiration for something that just is focused totally on that and appears to have so much power and so much knowledge and so much intellect and so much of everything because it is focused on human beings only. That is like giving the power to the psychopath. The psychopath is not in the same league as the person that it's attacking and controlling and may even defeat and destroy. But the other person is innocently just trying to live a normal, what you would call a spiritual existence. So they're not focusing on the psychopath, knowing everything about it with the intent of elimination or some sort of negative, destructive attitude towards the human being. No. If the spiritual person focused totally on anything, it could do infinitely more, especially if it was combined with other spiritual human beings. This is not combining with every human being on the planet. No. It's the reverse of that. Because every human being on the planet is like saying all cats should combine with all cats and all dogs and all elephants and all birds and all this. That is not possible. Not now. Maybe it was never even meant to be. That was a very poor example. I need to delete that completely because it not only makes no sense, but it actually goes against. See, this is my problem too, is getting my ideas across using examples and words and sometimes getting something wrong across most of the time. Because you see, some animals are of the matrix. Some animals are not spiritual. Some are. Whichever way you look at it, though, like a dog is not meant to breed with a cat, is it? Am I making any sense here? I don't think so. In other words, look, if you try to be too general and try to be too sort of universal spiritual, you're also being ridiculous. And yet my very videos do tend to talk like that. But that's really not what I'm saying, because that is the Matrix using what I'm saying. And I don't know what I'm saying most of the time anyway. You have to make the best of it what you can. And I only hope you've got a better mind than me, because it's hard. But anyway, I just use an example. That's why, it's very hard to use personal examples. I don't like to do that. I'm not a personal person, and yet I am now. I think someone said about me years and years ago when I was young that I was, I forget the word they used, but it kind of meant aloof and not really as friendly or as in connection with other humans as what the average person was. That's ironic, isn't it? And, because they probably expected me to be more because of some of my actions. But you see, this is, but that's a lie. But anyway, that's not making any sense, and not relevant. Just see me as a fallible human being, right, and say you can take some good things out of it if you want it. That's really all I can say. If you can get something out of it, if it helps you to be more cautious. This video I'm making here now was not the video I wanted to make, and not a video I would ever want to make, but it's a cautionary tale, as they say. It's a warning. Some of you may not need to be warned, because you're probably aware. But like I say, I was aware, but can still completely succumb. But I admit that that I think that I probably am at a lower frequency and lower level than most people. Like my level is just as low as a psychopath. The only thing is that I don't still have that mindset. But my actual frequency would be the same. But today, letting that negativity come over me, I could well have had the actions of a psychopath, destructive action even. Because don't forget, when the mind takes over and the mind parasite, the possession, the negative thing comes right in, your physical body will also be susceptible, because your mind will just take your body, take your hand and raise it in anger. Yes. So your hand becomes a weapon. You see what I'm saying? This can happen. It can happen in the blink of an eye. If you had time to think, and if you were not pressured by the Matrix, you would go, whoa, I'm not doing this. This is anti-life, this is anti-me, this is anti-everything that I would want in any way. But in the heat of the moment, like I say, a lot of the sad thing about the Matrix, I think personally, is that we have, like, the Matrix itself is a maximum security prison for the criminally insane, of which we are all part. But even in our Matrix, we have other little maximum security real prisons where they put people when they do things against the Matrix and break its rules and its so-called laws, its so-called spiritual laws, which are far from spiritual, really. But I would personally say that it's quite likely that a lot of the people in our so-called prisons, we are in a prison and we have little prisons even in the prison. That is where you're even more restricted, even though we're really in just a bigger version of that in a funny kind of way. The only difference is if you're lucky, you get to walk further. You get to travel further if you can, And that depends on your position too, of course. But a lot of those people that are in the little prisons are probably more human than those that have put them there, because they have been pressured, because they still feel and they have emotions, a bit like they say crimes of passion. you know, and that passion may or may not be coming from a good heart, shall we say? Is that the right way of putting it? It could be coming from a negative heart, but it could also be coming from a good heart. But it could be to where, because this matrix is a mad matrix. It messes with people and their emotions and their aggressiveness, their feelings, conditions, brainwashes, environmentally infects them to such an extent that, you can't pick the negative from the positive human beings. You can't pick it, and even the negative ones have been made that way. Now, made that way by the environment, not created originally as a negative being, as some probably could be. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's a different thing, like, I'm not explaining this very well as usual. And as you can see, I am worn out. Like, there's so little energy to actually even concentrate because the matrix is just confusing to such an extent and distracting and disturbing to such an extent. And that shows you that it has to do that because it doesn't want you to think clear. It knows that if it gives you even a little break, you might see some clarity. You might see something that might help you. And it doesn't want you to be focused on the truth or on the matrix. It wants you to be sidetracked by the negativity of the matrix. It wants you to be angry even at the matrix. The matrix likes me being angry at it, I would imagine, because it's never done anything to pacify that. It is provoking. It is antagonizing all the time. In fact, it is vicious and aggressive because its time is running out, I think. And this is why it is no longer playing a little dance. It is, it is hitting full force. It's like saying, hey, the end is near, so we're just going to go out with a bang. We're going to go down, as that old song used to say, in a blaze of glory. And they don't care who they take with them. And they certainly want to take the humans with them, that's for sure. They want to, it's almost as though they want to make this world to be shown to be a totally non-spiritual, negative place in every way. And you can take that whichever way you want. Some religious people might take it certain ways. And they might well be spot on too. I have to say, it certainly fits a lot of things. I'm not going to sit here and deny people's ideas if it fits. I observe and I see. And I say, if it fits, it fits. So, like I say, regardless, I might say, I've said, hey, I've said that there's a lot of wrong beliefs in the world. And even positive people can be taken down a negative path. This is what often happens, I think. I think that's what does happen quite a lot of the time. But as we are in now, what I would say is the end of things, the end of the World War III, a finish, almost a closure, even though it's certainly not closed yet. I lost my train of thought. So you've got to keep focused. Distraction, even just finding it. You see, even I'm trying to be careful with my words. Well, I haven't been very careful on this video. It's more like an explosion of anger and hate and everything that's negative, and I apologise for that. To make a video like this, which I probably shouldn't put out, but who knows? It's not good at all. It shouldn't be like this at all, I'd have to say. But at any rate, seeing I got sidetracked by even my own being mesmerised by the scope of it all, because it just gets you that way to where you're like, it's just too overwhelming. If I had been gradually eased into this and had all this over a lifetime, I would probably be able to manage. But when you sort of hit with it in a very limited time and you've actually known nothing, it makes it very hard for me to make sense or to be a benefit to myself or to anyone really. And like I say, few years ago, I just said, hey, I shall just stick this out. I shall try to look after an animal. That will be my goal. I can't even do that. Matrix doesn't want you to do anything positive at this point in time, I would say. That's my own observation, my own experience. You can say it's negative. Of course it's negative. You can say, wake up, stop being negative, get your act together, pull your socks up, get your skates on. Everything is, and certainly that's any rate. But basically it's a video about being disgusted at my own self for allowing that negative to take me over and to drive me to what could have been negative acts even. That's why I say a lot of the prisons in this world could well be where people, positive, normal human beings, because not everybody is. It would be kind of ironic, wouldn't it, if, like I've said before, in another video, where in the old days I think all the sane people are put in the madhouse, but the earth itself is run by mad people, because it's a reverse world, see, so everything is reverse. I follow that now and I see it on a daily basis. That's the only reason I say it's a reverse world. Everything is as it is not meant to be. Everything is in opposition to a real human being, because a real human being doesn't really want all that, that reverse world or that negativity. Everything that is in this world, most real human beings would want the opposite to it. But you see, it's not their world. It's a negative matrix. And most of us are finding it very hard to push up against the negative matrix. In fact, we're not only finding it hard, like myself, we're succumbing to it and actually being more negative than what even we would have thought possible. So the matrix is certainly a winner. I've said before the matrix always wins. Well, but, it's winning now. Is it going to win in the long, long run? That is another thing. When I say win, I mean take over completely with negativity. And whether, as I say, that's meant to be or inevitable, I cannot say that. I play it, as I say, by ear and try to... but I'm not doing very well, because basic things which I would have always known, I'm still getting defeated by. So it's distressing and disappointing for me to make this video and to say that. And I'm appalled and ashamed that this happens. But like I say, it's a cautionary tale at the least, if that's the sayings. Even everything we say is programmed from where we get things. I do feel that. I feel like we're just like programs that are being used to make the matrix even more negative, which is Human beings are not meant to be like that at all. If you allow yourself to be programmed, whether it by circumstances or technology or both, or by the vibration which has now taken over the world, because technology is a vibration, I think. And I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm going with it because I believe it. And I don't care if it doesn't make scientific sense. I don't care. You can laugh if you like. I wouldn't blame you if you did, but anyway, I will just end this video on an example which I was going to use when I was going to do a video on what people say is synchronicity, and I experienced synchronicity just a couple of years ago when the Matrix started to show itself. And I instantly knew, even then, I didn't know it was called synchronicity. I knew that it was beyond coincidence. Like in the past where things pop up, as I've said before, and you say, that's a coincidence. Oh, I was thinking that. Why did it show me this? Why is it emphasizing something? Usually it's emphasizing something, or it's a bit hard to explain, but when you experience it, you just know it at some point. I knew it at that point. Hadn't known it most of my life, but we all experience, as I've said, all our lives. It's just that it's like if you read a billboard in front of you, as I've said before, and you read what's written on it and it means nothing to you, or it just means something else, but everything has at least two meanings. When you are onto the synchronicity, or when you are like a human being is meant to be, where you just say, hey, I don't have to be a conniving mastermind like the Matrix. I just have to see what the Matrix shows me. The Matrix has to show humans the truth in clear sight. But they are absconded from any sort of guilt if you see what is written in front of you and dismiss it and say, oh, that is just something else, when you're supposed to get it, because it will be clear. It'd be a bit like saying, after today, when I have been negative, right? If I go outside and there's a billboard and it says, you have been evil today, don't be evil anymore, and I ignore that. I say, hey, yeah, well, I was negative, anti-life, or verged on it, completely taken over today, and then I see that sign that tells me that. Or even if it warned me yesterday, supposing I saw that yesterday, it says, be careful not to be evil, be careful, or that's putting it very bluntly. But the Matrix can sometimes put it very clearly and very bluntly, but you would just say, oh, well, you look at that and you say it's an ad. It might be advertising something, even though it says that direct comment directly to you. Everything is about you. Everything is about you. The Matrix is about each human being only. It's not for its own kind. It's not for the God entity, but the God entity and those are obliged, if you want to look at it this way, in my fantasy way of looking at things, is obliged to show the human the truth. If the human is not shown the truth, it's like the Matrix rules are broken, and even the God entity cannot break his own rules of the Matrix. You play in a video game, you have to play by the rules. It might be set up by the God Matrix, but even that entity has to abide by its rules. It can't break the rules for the human. It has to show human spiritual truth. But as humans are in a matrix and think it's a physical world and think it's all physical, and have always two options with everything that's presented to them, and most believe the physical because the physical makes sense. And it's true too. But it's not what you're meant to take from it, because that's just taking it at the superficial physical level that the Matrix hopes you will, so that you won't realise that the Matrix is a much more significant and about the human, revolves around them. So this is the only area where my videos are kind of empowering, but it is just the truth, because this is what I see. See, I'm so negative that I actually wish I could go back to the old world where nothing was significant to me and I was just a blundering fool human wandering around in a random matrix, because I reckon I had better odds and I could find a little bit of peace. But that's the way it's gone, so I don't know whether I explained that well. But at any rate, let me just use another example, because I will just try to use examples of things that actually happened to me. And I don't know whether it helps or not. It makes a bit of a point. You might think it makes no point. But don't forget, when I say that things happen to you, I'm not talking about just one random incident. I will use one random incident for the video. But obviously, if it was just one random incident, there would be no validity, shall we say, to any sort of synchronicity or this idea that everything revolves around a human being. It wouldn't. It would mean the opposite, that we live in a totally random physical world where anything can happen. Nothing is like a whole contrived, controlled video game set around a human being to manipulate and make them play and to extract negative energy from them to keep the matrix at a low frequency. That would make no sense at all. So clearly, synchronicity has to be something that is all the time, always around. It's just a matter of whether you notice it or not, or if you interpret it at a literal kind of way to where you get it. You know what I mean? So I just used an example. I had a whole list of things that had just happened to me over the last month. But I can't find the list. But I will use a very interesting example, what I think is interesting anyway. Obviously, I make myself a big deal by saying everything's interesting about what happens in my life. It is an interesting life, but it's not a desirable life. So whatever you do, don't, because psychopaths and narcissists, if you said your leg was injured, they'd say, oh, well, mine's crippled. See, this is the weird world we live in, where it's such a competitive world that even if, because when I fell down on the floor and could not literally get up, when I told someone, they said, I think you're just making it up, because they're like, hey, you're doing it for attention, because that's what they do. If someone lies all the time, they think you're a liar. If someone exaggerates everything about themselves, whether it even be sickness to get attention, or they think that's what other people do. They don't think someone